It was a time when the sky was still painted in shades of dark blue, and the sleepy village had not yet awakened to the rhythm of daily life. At the edge of a narrow street, a young man stood outside his modest mud brick home. His hands were raised toward the heavens, his eyes reflecting hope and faith. His name was Farid. He was just 22. His clothes were plain, his sandals thin, but his heart overflowed with sincerity. The early morning wind brushed gently against his face as he whispered a heartfelt prayer. O Lord of the worlds, you are the provider. Today, I once again step out in search of sustenance. Grant strength to my steps, so they never wander toward dishonesty. Make my heart resilient, so that I never fall for wealth tainted with wrongdoing. Let me choose hunger over haram, truth over temptation. Farid's voice echoed only in his soul, but the sincerity of it could have moved the sky. With nothing but faith in his pocket, he took his first steps into the uncertain streets of the city, unaware of the many trials that awaited him. He made his way toward the bustling city market, the heart of commerce, noise, and opportunity. The market was alive, even at this hour. Traders were setting up their stalls, calling out prices, arguing with customers, and praising their goods. Silk flowed from wooden racks, spices painted the air with their scent, and voices clashed like waves in a storm. Farid walked with purpose, his eyes searching not just for a job, but for something purer, an opportunity untouched by corruption. He stopped outside the grand shop of Sheikh Kasim, the city's most prominent grain merchant. The sheikh was a portly man, known for his wealth and influence. His belly stretched beneath embroidered robes, a testament to both prosperity and indulgence. When Sheikh Kasim saw Farid, he smiled and motioned him inside. "Come in, young man," he said warmly, offering him a chair. "I've heard a lot about you. People say you're honest, so honest that even gold won't tempt you. I need someone like you, someone to look after my warehouse accounts. I'll pay you handsomely, more than what you deserve." Farid felt a flicker of hope. A respectable job, good pay. Perhaps his prayer was already being answered. "Thank you, Sheikh Sahib," he replied humbly. "If the work is honest, I will do it with my full heart." The sheikh leaned closer, his voice dropping. "It's simple," he said, with a knowing smile. "We just play smart. A few adjustments here and there. Nothing major." And in that moment, Farid's test began. The moment Sheikh Kasim explained the nature of the job, Farid's heart sank. "We deal with the entire city," the sheikh said, voice calm, as if justifying a noble act. "When a poor farmer comes with his grain, the scale might show less, but we write more in the books to keep him happy and loyal. It builds trust, you see. But when a rich man arrives, someone who doesn't know the market well, we trim the weight just a little. Nothing that'll hurt him. This, my boy, is how business works." Farid sat still, the sheikh's words echoing in his mind like thunder. Deception disguised as wisdom. Dishonesty dressed in the robe of strategy. Was this what people now called business? With deep respect in his voice, Farid answered, "Sheikh Sahib, I am truly grateful for your offer. But I cannot become part of a system that profits by violating others' rights. I cannot take home money that belongs to someone else, not even a grain's worth. My conscience would never allow it." The sheikh's smile faded. "You'll regret this," he muttered. This market runs on cleverness, not conscience. You'll remain poor if you stick to your ideals. Farid stood, bowed respectfully, and replied, If my honesty keeps me poor, then I choose poverty because the glitter of haram never lasts, but the peace of a clean heart is eternal. And with that, he walked away from what could have been the end of his struggles. The sun had risen higher now. The market was fully alive. Farid's stomach grumbled, but his heart was calm. He wandered further into the market, praying silently for another opportunity, one that didn't ask him to sacrifice his soul. His steps led him to a different part of the bazaar, lined with luxurious shops selling perfumes, silk, and gemstones. In the middle stood the most exquisite of them all, Seth Himmat Rai's jewelry store, famous across the city for its brilliance. Farid hesitated, then stepped inside. The air was cool. The glass counters sparkled. Behind them stood the Seth himself, an older man with a warm voice and eyes that had seen generations of trade. He welcomed Farid with open arms. I've heard of your honesty, Seth Himmat Rai said, and I admire it. Perhaps we can help each other. Farid stood quietly inside Seth Himmat Rai's magnificent jewelry store, captivated by the glimmer of diamonds and gold that adorned every shelf. The shop exuded elegance, the soft chime of crystal decorations, the scent of rare incense, and the polite hush of wealthy customers speaking in lowered voices. It felt like a different world. Seth Himmat Rai extended his hand and invited Farid to sit. Young man, he said with a welcoming smile, this market is filled with merchants who chase profit like wolves. But you are different. Your name carries weight, not for money, but for character. Farid listened quietly, unsure where this was going. I need someone I can trust, the Seth continued, someone who can deal with my most valuable customers. You'll handle expensive stones, high-end clients, and confidential transactions. For that, I'll pay you generously, enough to build yourself a fine home within a year. The offer was generous, more than Farid had ever imagined. Perhaps, he thought, this was his answer. He straightened slightly, hope returning to his eyes. I'm honored by your words, Seth Sahib, Farid said. But before I commit, may I ask, how do you expect me to handle these transactions? What principles do you follow in your trade? The Seth smiled again, but this time, his eyes didn't smile with him. In this business, young man, presentation is everything, he said, gently polishing a diamond ring. When a rich but naive buyer enters, you double the price. Then when he bargains, you act firm, reluctant. Let him talk you down to 1.5 times the original price. He'll feel smart, like he's won. But in truth, we've profited greatly. Farid's hope began to fade. The Seth leaned in closer. And some stones, they aren't worth much. But if they sparkle well, just praise them. Make the customer believe it's rare. It's not a lie, he added casually. It's persuasion. This is how we survive. Farid's chest tightened. This too was deceit, but veiled behind charm and business talk. No weights or measures, but still dishonesty. He sat in silence for a moment, then took a breath. I'm sorry, Seth Sahib, he said softly. But if I must lie to earn, then I would rather remain empty-handed. I cannot sell illusions. The Seth smile disappeared completely. Seth Himmat Rai stared at Farid as though he were an alien in a world ruled by profit. What religion are you trying to follow, boy? He scoffed. Everyone here inflates prices. That's the market. That's how wealth is made. Or do you want to stay a beggar your whole life? Farid remained calm. If wealth demands that I lie, cheat, and deceive, then I choose to remain poor, because even one dishonest coin is heavier than a mountain on the conscience. The Seth shook his head in disbelief. Foolish ideals, he muttered, as Farid stood, bowed respectfully, and left the shop. Outside, the world was still noisy and glittering. But to Farid, it all seemed strangely hollow. Two great opportunities had slipped through his fingers, or rather, he had let them go. Not because he was unworthy, but because he refused to betray his soul. His feet ached from walking. His stomach was empty. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the crowded marketplace. The laughter of sellers and jingling of coins echoed all around him, making him feel lonelier than ever. Still, his heart carried something that could not be seen or measured: conviction. Farid wandered into the older part of the city, where the shops were smaller, the streets narrower, and the air filled with the scent of sweat and soil. He passed by cobblers, blacksmiths, and weavers, people who worked with their hands and lived simply. There, on a quiet lane, stood an old leather workshop. The sign above was fading, but the strong scent of raw leather told stories of years of labor. Inside, he saw an elderly man with calloused hands trimming sheets of leather. This was Ustad Aslam, a man known in the area for his directness and honesty. Farid entered humbly and greeted him. Ustadji, I'm looking for honest work. I can handle accounts, carry goods, or even learn your craft. Ustad Aslam looked him over with interest. You look too clean for this dusty work, he said gruffly, but maybe that's exactly what we need these days. He wiped his hands and added, I can't offer wealth, only hard work and honesty. The job is to deliver goods and collect payments, nothing fancy. Farid's eyes brightened. Then that's exactly what I've been looking for. Ustad Aslam nodded thoughtfully. You speak well, boy. But this work isn't done with words. It's done with dust on your back and patience in your heart. I understand, Farid replied sincerely. I just want to earn without shame. Whatever the task, I'll give it my best. Ustad Aslam gave a rare smile. All right then. From today, you work for me. Your first job starts tomorrow. Take a cart of leather goods to the central market and collect a 3-month-old payment from a shopkeeper named Sahib Din. But be warned, he's a tough one, slippery tongue, and stingy hands. Farid bowed. Consider it done. The next morning, Farid rose early, prayed as usual, and made his way to the workshop. After loading the goods onto a heavy wooden cart, he pushed it steadily through the narrow alleys toward the market square. The weight was nothing compared to the weight of hope on his shoulders. When he reached Sahib Din's shop, he greeted the man politely and presented the written account Ustad Aslam had prepared. Sir, I've come to collect the balance due on your previous order. My master says it's been pending for some time. Sahib Din, a short man with sharp eyes and fingers stained from years of dyeing cloth, glanced at the paper and laughed sarcastically. New boy, huh? Let me give you some advice. Your master sends someone every few months, thinking I've forgotten his mistake. I returned faulty leather last month. He knows that. But of course, it's not in the bill. Farid blinked. Sir, if something was returned, it would surely be noted. Ustad Aslam keeps clear accounts. Sahib Din's tone shifted. So you're calling me a liar now? No, sir, Farid replied calmly. But I believe the truth can't be bent to fit convenience. Sahib Dean's face darkened. Get lost, boy. You'll get nothing from me. Farid walked away, disappointed but composed. When he returned and recounted everything, Ustad Aslam sighed. I expected this. He does it every time. That's why most people stop trying. But you didn't give up, and that matters. Farid lowered his gaze. I just don't want to lose faith, Ustadji. Somewhere in this city, there must be work that rewards honesty. Ustad Aslam placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Then keep searching. Those who knock long enough eventually find the right door. That evening, as the sky turned amber and the call of dusk echoed softly in the distance, Farid sat by the edge of the workshop, gazing at the city skyline. The weight of rejection clung to his shoulders, but his spirit refused to break. After some silence, he turned to Ustad Aslam and said, Master, may I take a walk through the market? I want to observe, learn how people really do business in this city. Ustad Aslam nodded with a faint smile. Go, son. May your eyes find what your heart is looking for. But remember, the market is full of glitter, not always gold. With those words, Farid stepped back into the noisy streets. But now, he wasn't looking for employment. He was looking for truth. He wandered past fruit sellers shouting exaggerated claims, grocers mixing cheap grain into premium sacks, and cloth merchants praising synthetic fabric as pure silk scales were tilted. Numbers were altered. Smiles hid schemes. Everywhere he looked, he saw shortcuts. But none of them led to peace. He felt like a stranger in his own city. Yet even as despair crept in, his faith whispered, Allah is watching, and for every cheater, there is one honest man waiting to be found. Each day passed like the last. Mornings began with prayer. Afternoons spent searching. Evenings spent returning empty-handed. Still, he never missed a prayer. He never cursed fate. Instead, he reminded himself, maybe today won't be the day, but maybe tomorrow will. One such tomorrow brought him to a quiet corner of the city he had never noticed before. A path flanked by trees, leading to a modest wooden barn. Painted above the entrance, in faded letters, were two words, Khidmat-e-Khalq, service to the people. Below it, another line read, The Honest Gardener's Place. Something stirred in Farid's chest. He walked through the gate and entered a small, peaceful garden. The scent of fresh soil hung in the air. Rows of vegetables grew in neat lines. A gentle breeze carried the chirping of birds. At the far end, an elderly man with a white beard and worn clothes stood watering plants. His hands were old, but steady. His face, though wrinkled, radiated peace. Farid greeted him with respect. The man looked up, smiled faintly, and said, Looking for work, or for something more? Farid replied, Maybe both. The old man wiped his hands on a cloth tucked at his waist and offered Farid a place to sit beneath the shade of a mulberry tree. My name is Kadim Hussein, he said softly. Some call me Baba of the Garden. I've been tending to this land for over 30 years. What brings you here, son? Farid looked down for a moment, then met his gaze. I've walked away from many offers, sir, All of them promised wealth, but demanded dishonesty. I've turned down merchants who mix lies with their trade. I don't know if I'm foolish or faithful. Kadim Hussein smiled. Faithful and rare. That's why your feet led you here. Farid went on to tell him everything, from Sheikh Qasim's clever accounting tricks to Seth Himmat Rai's polished lies, to the humiliating experience with Sahib Din. Throughout his tale, Kadim Hussein said nothing. He just listened, nodding slowly, eyes reflecting a kind of wisdom that only time and trials could bestow. When Farid finished, Kadim Hussein took a deep breath. You're exactly the kind of man I've been praying for. Farid blinked in surprise. Praying? For me? For someone like you, Baba said. I run this garden not just to grow vegetables, but to prove that honest business can still survive in a corrupt world. The work here isn't easy. You'll wake before dawn, till the soil, clean the produce, weigh it accurately, and sell it in the city. You'll sweat more than you'll speak, and your earnings will be modest. Farid nodded eagerly. But they'll be pure, and I can sleep with peace. Kadim Hussein narrowed his eyes kindly. Even if someone offers a bribe, or tells you to sprinkle water on the vegetables to increase their weight like others do? Without a moment's hesitation, Farid replied, Master, I would rather sleep hungry than sell watered dishonesty. My faith is worth more than silver. I want to earn without shame. The old man's face lit up. He reached forward and embraced Farid warmly. Then from tomorrow, this garden is your new home. In that single moment, something changed, not in the world, but in Farid's world. For the first time in days, his heart felt light. The next morning, Farid arrived at the garden before sunrise. The earth still glistened with dew, and the cool air was filled with the scent of soil and fresh leaves. Kadim Hussein was already awake, tending to the roots of a spinach patch with care. Start with these, Baba said, pointing to a row of ripe vegetables. Pluck them gently, clean off the dirt, and weigh them carefully. The scales should always tilt slightly in the customer's favor. That's our unwritten rule. Farid nodded with quiet resolve. Always a little more, never less. By mid-morning, he loaded the day's harvest into a wooden cart and made his way to the market. The sun rose higher, the crowd thickened, and shouts of sellers once again filled the air. But unlike his previous visits, Farid was no longer a seeker. He had become a part of the market. He laid out his vegetables, bright and fresh, and greeted each customer with a smile. His prices were fair. His scales were accurate. And when someone offered him extra money for faster service or better produce, he politely refused. No, sir, he would say. The price is the same for everyone. This is not a game of bargaining, but of trust. It wasn't long before customers began to notice. This young man never cheats, one old woman whispered. His vegetables are always clean. His hand never shakes on the scale. Word spread. Farid's stall began to attract loyal buyers, people tired of being shortchanged by flashy vendors with hidden tricks. One afternoon, a skeptical man asked him, "Why do you always give more than we pay for? Doesn't that bring you loss?" Farid's reply was simple, yet profound. Worldly profit may shrink, but divine blessing never does. This is not just business. It's my promise to my Creator. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into years. Farid never changed. Rain or shine, profit or no profit, he stuck to his values. His work became his worship, and though his clothes remained simple, his reputation became rich. Even the other merchants, once amused by his idealism, began to respect his presence. Farid had found his place, not just in the market, but in the hearts of people who longed for honesty in a dishonest world. 4 years passed quietly, like pages of a book turned by the wind. Fareed remained the same, faithful, honest, and tireless. He never lied to a customer, never accepted a bribe, never compromised the trust placed in him. His back grew stronger, his hands rougher, but his heart stayed soft and grateful. People from every corner of the city began to recognize him, not for his wealth, but for his unwavering character, the honest vegetable seller, they called him. Some would travel across neighborhoods just to buy from him, knowing they would be treated with fairness and respect. One golden evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees and the garden rustled with the last breeze of the day, Kadim Hussein called Fareed to sit beside him on the old wooden bench. The air was filled with the scent of ripe tomatoes and fresh mint. Baba held a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "Fareed," he began, his voice slower than usual, "for 4 years, I've watched you. You had many chances to cheat, but you never did. You had many reasons to give up, but you never stopped. You've honored this soil with your truth." Fareed lowered his head in gratitude. Kadim Hussein smiled and continued, "The time has come for me to rest, I'm old son. My hands are no longer as steady, and my back aches in the mornings. But this garden, it needs a guardian. Someone who won't let it be tainted. Someone who understands that real wealth lies in integrity." He opened the cloth and revealed a small, rusty iron key. "This garden," Baba said, placing the key gently into Fareed's hand, "is no longer mine. It's yours now. The land, the tools, the trust, it all belongs to you." Fareed looked at the key, stunned. His throat tightened and his eyes welled up. "But I am not worthy of this, Baba." "Yes, you are," the old man said firmly. "You earned it not with money, but with patience, loyalty, and faith." Fareed stood silently, clutching the key as if it were a treasure chest. That night, he stood once again under the same sky where he had prayed 4 years ago. Only now, he wasn't just a seeker of honest work. He had become a living answer to his own prayer. That night, Fareed stood in the center of the garden, looking up at the stars. The same sky that had witnessed his struggle now looked down upon his success. Not the kind measured in coins, but in character. The rusty iron key rested in his pocket, but the real treasure was in his heart. He walked between the rows of vegetables, now ripe with promise. The plants he had once watered as a helper were now under his care as the owner. Yet nothing about him changed. He still rose before dawn, still gave a little more to each customer, still wiped the scales to make sure they never leaned unfairly. People from across the city came to see the garden. It was no longer just a patch of soil. It had become a symbol, a place where honesty grew as strong as the roots of the spinach, where faith bloomed brighter than the marigolds on the fence young boys came to learn. Old merchants came to reflect. One afternoon, a young man approached Fareed and said, "Everyone said honesty doesn't work in this world, but you've proven them wrong. How did you do it?" Fareed smiled. "I didn't do it. Allah did. I only chose to keep walking. Even when the path was empty, even when the hunger was real, and I never traded my principles for ease. That was the real journey." The young man nodded, inspired. Fareed walked back to his small shed that evening and opened an old notebook, his very first one, filled with his early records. On the inside cover, he wrote, "The glamour of haram may glitter like gold, but only halal shines in the eyes of God." Years later, when Qadim Hussein passed away, the city held a small ceremony in the garden. People shared stories of his honesty, but most of all, they spoke of his greatest legacy, Farid. The man who had once wandered hungry through the market now fed others with both food and wisdom. And the garden? It flourished under his care, not just with crops, but with character. Because when you choose truth over temptation and faith over fear, your reward is never just a job. It's peace. It's purpose. It's legacy.